So I'm gonna just talk really briefly about some of the academic data. I'm not going to go through all the slides that we originally planned. All right, sounds like they can hear us, so let's go ahead and move on to slide 13.
All right, well, the slides, I'm not sure the slides are showing, so we're going to talk about our funding a little bit. It's hard not to see it, but a third of our budget goes to special education, as I had mentioned before, students with identified needs, some percent in district, others that have to go out of Norwich for very specialized programs, and then a portion goes toward students that go to Norwich Free Academy, our designated high school. Another portion, almost 25% of our $77 million general fund source goes toward tuitions. Since we don't have a high school of our own, we send many of our students to Norwich Free Academy. That's about $18 million for about a quarter of that percentage of the general fund. We also provide opportunities for our students to attend other high schools, designated high schools that the Board of Education has approved. So some of our funding goes to those high schools, and other students who go to other schools of choice, that takes some of our funding also. Adult education is a small portion. We are part of a collaborative, and many towns in our area all contribute, and we have classes all throughout the region. Athena, you want to talk a little bit about
the insurance, taxes, and utilities? That's basically the heat and gas and electricity that we have. Taxes are payroll taxes and Medicare, and unemployment. Insurance is property, liability, health insurance, retiree insurance, all of those.
And the remaining funding, which is about 33% maybe, give or take, of the $77 million, is for everything else. So that includes much of our programming, many of our staff, anything for kindergarten through 8th grade students. You want to talk a little bit about the grants? We'll just go a little bit into the grants.
Sure. So you'll see on the next couple of slides some information about our grant funding source. So we have over 40 grants. And if you think about the general fund compared to the grant allocation, grants make up about 20% of the funding. For us right now, we're just under $15 million in grants. And then, Jess, if you go to the next slide, about 50% of our staff in Norwich, with that $15 million, are grant funded. So we have about 800 staff, and about 50% of them are all paid for with a grant. And when we say that they're paid for by a grant, their benefits, every part of their compensation package is paid for with the grant.
Mrs. Donnelly, would you like to do the next slide?
So under our student demographics, as we said before, our students are doing well that are identified as the high risk. 19% of our population are special education students. 75% of our students receive free and reduced lunch. 18% of our students are English language learners. And this year, up to this point, we've had 65 students who are identified as homeless out of the 3,600 students that are in district.
We also have students that are very mobile. So students move in and out of our district on a regular basis. They move in and out of our district and around our district. About 30% in a year or any given time, really totally, move somewhere. So in the old days, when I was in school, I might be sitting next to someone who I went to kindergarten through 8th grade with. Our students are new to our district, new to our country, new to Norwich, and then new to various schools. So we have a lot of mobility. On the next slide, it's just really a nice graphic that talks about equality in funding and education and equity. And it really speaks for itself how important it is to have equity in funding for education so that all of our students and all of our towns received receive what our students deserve for their education. So I'm going to have Dr. Baird talk a little bit about our instructional framework, where we're going with that.
We spent a lot of time this year, and a lot of our grant staff are the ones who helped to make this work happen. Establishing a clear instructional framework for the district, meaning that we're really working on our readers and writers workshop, and then expanding those workshop practices to the other content areas. So we're really consistent with our curriculum development and our curriculum implementation. Another project that has been going on behind the scenes, another grant project that's been going on, is the refurbishment of the planetarium. So many people are not aware, but we do have a planetarium that has been more of a storage facility, but we're bringing it back and revitalizing it, and we hope to have a sort of a re-grand opening in next fall. But that was all done with the grant. And people in the district are familiar with our 2 elementary magnet schools, and one of the things that we worked on this year was a new grant that would hopefully bring in $4 million to convert the 2 middle schools, the 6th grade academy and Kelly Middle School for grades 7 and 8, into 2 6 through 8 magnet-themed middle schools. So we'll find out whether or not we get that grant in the fall.
And then we'll have a lot of planning to do, but
Yes,
very exciting planning.
So the infrastructure planning, we're looking at creating a school building committee to evaluate, well, we already evaluated the infrastructure in the city, and we're looking at possibly consolidating some of the schools and the programs. We have changing enrollment in our district, so we really are trying to equalize everything, and doing the facilities project, we will have access to outside grant funding sources that we don't currently have access to right now, and we could potentially even charge tuition inter-district because we would have additional space.
Which is something we can't do now because all of our buildings are pretty full with our students. One more comment about our enrollment is we're one of the 16 cities in the state that, with enrollment projections that are expected to stay stable or rise, where most districts are struggling with declining enrollments and how do they fill their schools. We're struggling with having more students, which is a great thing. We're struggling to make sure that we have the right space and staff to meet their needs. On the next slide, we just wanted to mention what our target budget is. That the Board of Ed approved to go to the City Council, a 3.9% increase, thereabouts. It changes a little as we get accurate numbers from the state, so it varies somewhat, but we're looking for $77 million. What's challenging, and we know it's challenging for everyone, is that our state has not settled in with a budget yet, so we don't know what we will receive in terms of municipal funding and grant funding. As an urban district, one of the alliance districts, we've received funding over the years that has really sustained us, and network funding and other funding that we're not sure will come forward. We need that to keep moving. In addition, in order to keep our programs and services and the progress of our students moving forward, we've asked the municipality for money to fund this. And again, it's a hard thing when the city doesn't know how much the state's going to provide, and our city is struggling in itself. But we have another slide that really talks about, it's a kind of a more detailed look at where the money goes, what's fixed, and what isn't. Because if costs are fixed, we can't use it for anything other than what they're supposed to be used for. So the remaining general fund, which is in the upper left-hand corner, there's not much left to carry our district. All of the rest of the expenses come out of there, when what we've explained before goes for the rest. Do you want to talk about some of the adjustable expenses?
Sure, there is a portion that we would consider adjustable expenses. And those are the line items that may not be contractual, they may not be mandated. So it's things like capital repairs. Capital repairs are things like the paving that we do, they're fixing windows, they're patching roofs, things like that. We've got the certified salaries. That would be basically the certified salaries for the K-8 classroom teachers primarily. Dues and subscriptions, those are anything that, you know, we are purchasing that may be, you know, required for, like for me, business administrator, I need to belong to CASBO. So health supplies, that's for the nursing, equipments, instructional supplies, library supplies, materials, office supplies, basically everything we need for the classroom, for the offices, to keep all of this organization running.
And I want to say that we've cut that to the minimum. In every line item in those areas, we have the bare minimum. So everybody knows we're kind of limiting any kind of expenses other than the ones that are fixed that we can't change.
Professional services, that is very often tied to special ed. Repairs of the vehicles, we don't have very many vehicles, but they do require some repairs. That is not the vehicles for transportation, we don't own those. Support salaries, that would be the paraeducators and anything like custodians or anything that's not a certified teacher. Technology equipment, we have greater and greater needs to comply with the state and to do the testing. And it's all technology based now, so there's always a need for updated technology. Phones, we need to have phones. And basically substitute support for these programs.
As we work with the municipal leaders, and the city manager was tasked with cutting the municipal budget that he presented at 3%, 4%, 5%, so that the city council then could figure out what the taxes would be for us and what the cost would be to the residents. So a 3% cut to the city budget is a 1.08% cut to our schools, or about, based on what we've asked for, about $820,000. We wanted to quantify that a bit, and that really is running the district through the municipal funding for 7 days of school. Now, people react thinking that we're just going to say, oh, school's over, but the truth is we are mandated by law to provide 180 school days to our students. But we're also mandated to have the money to do it. So we are looking at every option. We want to provide and have to provide our students with 180 days of school. So you can imagine that if we had to eliminate $820,000 from our budget, that could be 7 days of school. We were able to come up with some reductions, and they're listed on your slide. And they're things that we need, but we will have to do without. Some things are estimates, right, for insurance or other things that are still coming in that may come in lower than we thought. One of the big losses would be the school resource officer, which we partner with the Norwich Police Department, and other things. We have several retirees, so that's a savings when you rehire. One of the challenges that we're faced with is personnel. People are the most costly part of any budget, pretty much, so that cutting or eliminating any instructional positions, any teacher positions, would create very, very large classes. Numbers are one thing for teachers to teach. Our teachers always go above and beyond, our staff does. The bigger issue is the size of some of our classrooms, and doubling the size of the class or even adding 5 more to the class if we have to combine classrooms is not safe. We couldn't do it. So we're very limited in where we can cut back in order to meet the mandate of the city, understanding that money's limited. A 4% cut to the city budget is a 2.8% cut to our budget, which is about $1.5 million. And again, we quantified that to equal about 13 days of school, should we have to do that based on just general fund money. And we didn't even come up with more cuts in that area because as you saw prior to this, a 3% cut, we didn't even get to that amount. And not for the lack of trying, let me tell you. A 5% cut to the city budget, the impact is 3% or so, a little, that would, to our school budget, and that would flat fund us, meaning what we needed, we would not get. That is quantifiable actually through 20 days of school, 4 weeks of school, that increase would fund without it. I'm not saying we would lose 20 days, but that could happen, I guess, in the real world if we didn't have the money, even though we're mandated. So I'm not saying we're not going to have 20 days of school. I'm saying that's what it equates to. So now we are going to take some questions, and Jessica will read them to us as they come in, so feel free. If we don't know the answer, any of us, then we will tell you that. We will find the answer, and we will get back to you, and you can message our Facebook page with your contact information or email us at info@norwichpublicschools.org. So we have about 15 more minutes. We will do this again and be right on time. And again, thank you for bearing with us and being part of our initial live broadcast. So Jessica, if as a question comes in, if one does, please read it to us. We'll kind of reframe it and answer. Oh, there is a question about cutting back on winter recess days. We have 2 days in our winter recess right now. One is a holiday, so that's President's Day, I believe. And then we have one other day that's kind of a midwinter vacation, which is a long way from the week we used to do years ago. Any elimination of days for students and staff requires us to open contracts. We have 7 bargaining units that we deal with, and we would have to renegotiate that. But generally, that 2 days wouldn't have that much of an impact, but anything is a suggestion that we will look at, so we appreciate that. Is there another question?
What was the reason we went from a 6th grade academy to now considering a 6-8 magnet school, and what is the impact fiscally?
So it's a neutral impact to the general fund budget or the city budget. We would not require any additional staffing that we would pay for out of the general fund. It really is a way for us to look at increasing our programming, having some more unique programming at the middle schools, and using grant funds in order to do that. It would allow for kids who are in the existing magnet programs to have that magnet pathway towards potentially 9-12 magnet program too. We have the marine science program in, I believe, Groton.
Yes.
So it would allow for those students to continue with that theme-based programming. And it would also allow for us to return to that 6-8 model, which we had to move away from, in part because of budget reductions. And kids would have a choice in terms of which of the 2 programs they would do, but it would be cost neutral to the city budget.
And it would also equalize the size of the schools. They wouldn't necessarily be equal because Kelly Middle School facility is larger than the 6th grade academy, but we would be back to more, a little bit more of an equal footing, but with exciting theme-based learning that I think would benefit our students. We do. So we're really hoping that we hear about this in the fall.
We've been given a mandate to have flat funding. Why is it not happening here?
We're working to come to flat funding. It is a mandate, but it's also a mandate to provide the services that we have to provide our students by law. We have to do it safely, and we have to do it according to the law. So we are balancing what the request is from the city and what the mandates are from the state and the laws are for what we have to provide to our students, what we feel they deserve, obviously. It's about the kids. It's about providing them with a really good education. We're on the right path. We had the best year of growth this year. We kind of have the recipe a little bit for how we do our curriculum. We're building around our language arts curriculum. Math is growing. We're focusing on other areas. We are scoring higher than we have in the past for a long time. New tests, but we're scoring higher. As Dr. Baird said earlier, our attendance has improved. A lot of things have improved, and we want to stay on that path. So while understanding that taxes are high, this is my own opinion, I'll give it, is that if I understand about taxes and the need to be able to afford where we live, because I do live here also, is that if we strip all of our services and a good education, people won't come here anyway, even if the taxes are lower. So it is a catch-22. We respect what the council has asked. We're not sure where we can cut based on the mandates that we have and the number of students that we have to educate and the facilities that we have in which to do that.
We don't have any questions right now, so maybe we should go to the Q&A questions we had in the budget. Let's go to.
We'll just do a few more.
Oh, they're not in there. It's on my screen.
Okay.
I don't have.
Right. But
Um,
we'll just do a few more, and if people have other questions, they can contact us. But the other thing I wanted to mention, while we're going to come up with a few more fast facts for us, is about our staff. We do have a lot of staff. We work really hard with all of our students. We're doing a lot of small group instruction now through grants, and it's made a difference. But our staff give back to the community too. We help raise funds for the Norwich Public Schools Education Foundation. Now that group of volunteers takes whatever donations they get and they put it right back into our classrooms. Teachers and other staff, any staff can write a grant, and they receive the grant to enrich students' opportunities. Our staff has also done performance at the staff volleys through the foundation. We've had art auctions. Many of our talented staff donate their work. Our offices and schools have adopted families during the holidays, and we fill their baskets and their Christmas trees. We all donate to the United Way throughout the year. And actually, we just came from the mobile food pantry. It was our month, once a month, one of our schools or departments volunteers at the United Way mobile food pantry. And today, central office and UNCUS network school staff volunteered. And our staff has, over the years, been very, very generous with furlough days, freezes, and other ways that they can chip in to help the community. So we are community partners. We're probably the second or third largest employer in the city. So we bring a lot. Okay? Jess?
So from Jennifer, we have, but every year you come in with higher increases than other towns and always figure it out.
So I would say that
So in past, we've always figured out our
How to
budget.
make it work?
And how can we not do it this time?
Well,
I mean, there was a sizable cut last year, so which has really left our classes to already pretty high class sizes. So there's not really a lot of room to absorb additional cuts. And I'll just point out, a 3% increase is not an unreasonable increase. NFA is passing on to us a 2.5% increase that we have to absorb into our budget. And 3% is not, it's probably pretty average in terms of
for
what
a district our size.
they would be asking for all your contractual increases that you have.
Right, with 7 bargaining units, and we do I think we do very fair negotiations. And our staff actually, we know insurance is very, very costly. Most people have insurance benefits. That's also a mandate and something we should do. But our staff pay some of the highest copays and percentages of insurance out of any contract in the city. So we always try to help, but you keep cutting away at what's mandated, what's not grant funded, and at some point there's nothing left to cut. And that's where we're at, we knew we'd hit the wall, but you can't squeeze more students into some of our classrooms. And I hope people come visit our schools and see our classrooms and our great kids. Is there another question?
Not necessarily a question, but I think you can expand on it.
Mhm.
One person mentioned about overhearing taking kids out of school and putting them in private schools.
Mhm.
How would that impact? I think that would be a good way
okay.
to
If
explain.
Okay, well, there's more and more talk about vouchers. We know that from the federal level. We don't know where that will land. If a parent chooses to send their student to a parochial school, that they pay for that, and that's their choice. So, in essence, we lose out on that student. If a parent chooses to send a student to a magnet school outside of Norwich or inside of Norwich, there are more and more elementary magnet schools. We do have to pay a tuition for them. So what happens is, rather than us having the funding for that student, we're paying out funding for that student to go to another town to a magnet school. That's why we're trying to compete in some ways and really make sure that our programs are stellar, which they are. For high school, since we don't have our own high school, we have many choices for students at all different costs. So that will cost us no matter what. Some programs are a little more than others. We pay, in some programs, many support costs, and that adds to what we have to lay out. But for really the K-8 students, if parents send their students out of town to a magnet school, we would have to pay that cost. Maybe, Mrs. Donnelly, just quickly talk about, if you can, some of the other costs that we pay to privates in town or other services that we provide.
So we are required to provide a portion of an IDEA grant for students who are enrolled in the parochial schools under service plans if they're identified as special education students and would qualify for an IEP in the public school. In addition to that, we provide nursing services to the parochial schools. We provide our school psychologists to do evaluations under Child Fund, as well as the speech pathologist, OT, PT, and if needed, special education teachers to do evaluations for academics.
And we provide those services to the charter school, integrated charter school.
Yes, they
Right.
also have IEPs, not service plans, but we still
Right.
provide those services to any of the private or charter schools.
We also provide transportation, so part of our transportation costs, which comes out of the general fund, transports students to high school, wherever that is, transports our parochial school students and the integrated day charter school students. So that's within Norwich, but that maximizes our buses and limits our use to do other things, but that's all part of the whole picture. They're Norwich kids, and so we provide. One of the other things I wanted to mention is that we are fortunate through the the Norwich Public Schools Education Foundation to have brought back instrumental music to our middle schools now, and then Waquanic School has through their magnet grant. None of these funds came through the general fund, but we lost the opportunity to provide music. Any research you do, you know that instrumental music or choral music or those types of things for students hooks them in. Really, they say that it improves student achievement. I believe that. I agree with that. And we had the most wonderful concert this year. The growth of that program has been phenomenal. And I thank the staff for that and the foundation for providing the instruments and the grants to help us do this. So we're trying to maintain that because our students deserve that. We also try to add world language in the middle school. What happens is our students who have lost that because we don't have the funding go to a high school somewhere, and they're kind of behind the 8 ball because other students in other towns come with years of instrumental music or world language. So we're trying to find the dollars to do some of those things. Any other facts that people want to mention? Because it's almost time. I guess I'll just talk for a minute about the facilities plan, which we'll do another broadcast, I think, focused on that. It's been very controversial, but we spent a couple of years with a committee, a city-appointed committee, looking at our needs. We have many buildings, something like 15 buildings. Many of them are old, need updating. and are crowded right now. So if we combine into 4 schools, which is what the recommendation of the consultants were, we can build onto those schools, determine as a community what they will look like. That has not been determined, and that is on purpose. We did not say we're going to make it up as we go. We're going to look for community support to determine what should our schools look like if we consolidate. So it's not to keep people out. We're doing it in a staged way to invite the community in to help us make some of those decisions. So you'll hear more about that project as we go forward. Is there any other comments or questions? But we do really thank you for your patience, and also for being part of this first live broadcast. We do public access work, but it's not live. This is our first live, so hopefully if it's successful, now that we got it down, we'll do it again. And we thank you for following us on Facebook, and continue to write to us, send us comments, give us your feedback. That's the only way we know what the community thinks is important and wants for our students' future. We are all in here for the same thing, and that's to provide the best education possible for our students.
No more questions.
Okay, then I guess thank you to our staff and to our tech people, and to all of those of you who joined us, and join us next time. Thanks very much.